The autumn sun filtered through the oak trees at Riverside Park as Jennifer adjusted her designer sunglasses, trying to remain inconspicuous. 3 years had passed since her divorce from Thomas was finalized, 3 years since she'd managed to convince herself that she'd moved on. Yet here she was, walking the same paths, remembering the same moments when their marriage felt unbreakable. She spotted him near the fountain, Thomas, looking remarkably similar to how he had 5 years ago, before everything fell apart. Her heart quickened, not with longing but with something sharper, resentment. He'd cheated on her. Multiple times. With her best friend, with a colleague, with a personal trainer. The humiliation had burned so deeply that she'd thought seeing him again would bring closure. Instead, it brought rage. He was alone, walking slowly, lost in thought. Jennifer noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the same one she'd bought him for their 10th anniversary. The betrayal stung all over again. A group of children ran past, splashing through a muddy puddle created by the morning's rain. Jennifer watched the water spray, and something wicked sparked in her mind. Without thinking, she picked up a handful of the muddy water and hurled it at Thomas just as he turned to look in her direction. The mud splattered across his face and chest, shocking him into momentary paralysis. Jennifer burst into laughter, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed her pain. "How does it feel, Thomas? How does humiliation feel?" she shouted, not caring who heard. Thomas wiped the mud from his eyes slowly, deliberately. When his face became clear, he didn't look angry. Instead, a small, almost pitying smile crossed his lips. "Jennifer," he said calmly, his voice steady. "I hope you got that out of your system." He walked away, brushing the mud from his expensive Italian suit, leaving her standing there, suddenly feeling foolish. She didn't notice the luxury car waiting at the park entrance, or the expensive security team that appeared moments later. She didn't see Thomas being ushered into that vehicle with reverence and respect. She only saw the back of him disappearing into the autumn afternoon, and wondered why his smile had seemed so knowing. That night, Jennifer received a text from her friend Monica. "Did you see the news? Turn on Channel 7. With trembling hands, Jennifer switched on the television. A news anchor was reporting on the return of Thomas Mitchell, the long-lost heir to the Mitchell family fortune, worth over $8 billion. His father, Gregory Mitchell, had been searching for him for 15 years. Thomas had been adopted as an infant without knowing his true heritage. Just days ago, a DNA test had confirmed his identity, and he'd claimed his rightful place as CEO of Mitchell Industries. Jennifer's blood ran cold as she watched footage of Thomas stepping out of a penthouse building, wearing that same suit, now cleaned of mud. Her stomach dropped. The woman with him was Victoria Blake, a stunning model and actress Jennifer recognized immediately. Victoria was touching his arm possessively, smiling up at him with clear affection. Jennifer realized, in that sickening moment, that she hadn't insulted a man she could safely antagonize. She'd humiliated someone whose social and financial power was now immeasurable. And worse, he'd moved on to someone far more beautiful, far more successful, and far more worthy of his new status. The mud had settled, but Jennifer's world was only beginning to collapse. The news of Thomas's identity spread like wildfire through social media. Jennifer's carefully curated Instagram account, where she'd portrayed herself as thriving post-divorce, suddenly became a liability. Old friends and acquaintances started calling, their questions pointed and invasive. "Is it true you two were married? Did you know who he was? I saw a video of someone splashing mud at him in the park, was that you?" The video. Someone had captured the moment on their phone. What Jennifer had thought was a private humiliation had been recorded and shared across social platforms, accumulating millions of views. In the comments section, people dissected her appearance, her anger, her pettiness. News outlets picked it up, running segments about the bitter ex-wife and the man who endured her rage. Her job as a marketing director became precarious. Her boss called her into his office, his expression sympathetic but firm. "Jennifer, I need to be honest with you. We've had 3 major clients express concern about your involvement in that situation. They feel it reflects poorly on our company. We're going to have to let you go." The words hit harder than she expected. It wasn't just about losing a job, it was about losing control. Thomas had always been the one with everything to lose in their relationship. Now, inexplicably, the situation had reversed. He'd risen to a pedestal she couldn't reach, and she'd fallen from the precarious height she'd climbed on her own. That evening, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to pick up. "Ms. Jennifer Hayes?" A professional voice, distinctly corporate. "Yes? I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Thomas Mitchell. I'm his personal legal counsel. I understand you've been circulating statements about Mr. Mitchell on social media that contain false and defamatory information. We're prepared to send you a cease and desist order, and if you continue, my client is authorized to pursue legal action for defamation and damages." Jennifer's mouth went dry. "I haven't said anything about him that isn't true. He did cheat on me. Multiple times. That may be your perspective, Ms. Hayes, but publicly making such accusations against Mr. Mitchell at this time, when his reputation is being re-established, could be considered financially damaging. I suggest you remove any posts referencing my client from your social media accounts and cease all public commentary about him. Consider this a professional courtesy warning." The line went dead. Jennifer sat in the darkness of her apartment, realizing the full extent of her mistake. She'd thought the mud splash was retribution, a moment of justified release. Instead, it had been the trigger for her own public ruin. Thomas had moved forward with his life completely unconcerned about her existence, but her single act of spite had ensured that her connection to him would define her in the public eye for years to come. The cruelest part? Thomas hadn't even responded to her directly. He'd simply had his lawyer handle it. He'd moved beyond her entirely, while she remained stuck in the mire of her own making. Thomas sat in the penthouse of Mitchell Tower, overlooking the city that now bore his family's name everywhere: Mitchell Bank, Mitchell Hotels, Mitchell Insurance. The scale of his inheritance still felt surreal, even after weeks of orientation meetings and board presentations. But it wasn't the wealth that occupied his mind. It was Victoria. She arrived at his penthouse around 8 o'clock, carrying champagne and wearing a deep burgundy dress that made his breath catch. Victoria Blake was everything he'd imagined success would look like: confident, accomplished, and seemingly untouched by the complications that had defined his earlier life. "The board meeting went well?" she asked, settling onto the velvet sofa as Thomas opened the bottle. "Better than expected. They're respecting my recommendations for the quarterly earnings projections." He handed her a glass, watching the bubbles rise. "Though I have to admit, I'm still processing this entire situation. 3 months ago, I was a carpenter in Portland. Now I'm managing an empire." Victoria reached over and took his hand. "You're handling it beautifully, Thomas. Most people would be paralyzed by the transition. You've been remarkable." He pulled her closer, needing the contact, needing the reassurance that this wasn't a dream. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky. "I saw that video again," Victoria said quietly. "The woman in the park. Is that really your ex-wife?" Thomas's jaw tightened. "Unfortunately. Jennifer and I had a complicated divorce. She's angry. It makes sense. She must be devastated," Victoria said, not unkindly. "Finding out you're a billionaire after treating you that way." "I'm not concerned with her anymore," Thomas said, but he was aware of the lie in those words. He'd thought about Jennifer several times, wondered if she understood the magnitude of her mistake. He'd instructed his lawyer to send the cease and desist not out of malice, but out of practicality. He didn't need his past being dragged through media scrutiny. Victoria stood and took his hand. Come with me. She led him to the bedroom, where the city lights filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. She kissed him slowly, deliberately, her hands moving across his shoulders and down his back. Unlike the fumbling, guilt-ridden intimacy he'd shared with Jennifer during his affair, this was different. This was uncomplicated. This was present. They moved together with the ease of two people comfortable in their own power, undressing each other with purpose and appreciation. Victoria's skin was soft, her body sculpted by yoga and intention. When he was inside her, moving with her in rhythm, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. Not the peace of rest, but the peace of alignment, of being exactly where he was meant to be. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Victoria's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached over, read the message, and smiled. "My agent just confirmed the Vogue cover shoot," she said. "It goes to print next month." "Congratulations," Thomas murmured, kissing her forehead. "We're going to be the power couple everyone's talking about," she said, almost to herself. "You know that, right? The billionaire and the model. We're going to be iconic." Thomas considered this. He'd inherited a fortune and stepped into a life he hadn't known existed. Victoria had been born into this world of status and visibility. Together, they would be unstoppable in the social and financial spheres. Yet, there was something hollow about the thought. As Victoria drifted to sleep beside him, Thomas found himself wondering if this was love or simply an arrangement that made sense on paper. But he pushed the thought away. He'd spent enough time in complicated emotional terrain. This was simpler. This was better. 6 months passed. Thomas's tenure as CEO of Mitchell Industries was marked by aggressive expansion and strategic acquisitions. He'd doubled the company's market value and was being featured in Forbes, Fortune, and business publications worldwide. Victoria had become a fixture at his side: charity galas, board dinners, exclusive events. Their relationship seemed cemented in the public eye as the partnership of two ambitious, successful people. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. "I don't understand why we can't just move in together officially," Victoria said one evening, brushing her hair in the penthouse bathroom. "The media would love it. It's strategic for both of us." "We are together," Thomas replied from the bedroom. "You know what I mean. A public announcement. An engagement would be even better." She emerged from the bathroom, her expression calculated. "Think about it, Thomas. Your net worth is constantly rising. An engagement to someone of my status would cement your position in high society." Thomas felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd been trying not to examine the nature of their relationship too closely, but Victoria's words stripped away any pretense. This wasn't about love. It was a transaction. "I'm not ready to get engaged," he said. Victoria's face tightened. "You've had 6 months. What are you waiting for? There's no one else." There was. Or rather, there was someone else taking up space in his mind. He'd seen Jennifer once more, months earlier, in a grocery store. She'd looked diminished somehow, wearing worn jeans and a faded shirt, her eyes downcast. She hadn't noticed him, and he'd left without approaching her. But the image had stayed with him. That night, after Victoria fell asleep, Thomas did something he'd sworn he wouldn't do. He searched for Jennifer online. Her social media accounts had been deleted or made private. She wasn't listed at her previous job. It was as if she'd disappeared from the public eye entirely. He found himself wanting to reach out, to apologize for the cease and desist, to explain that he understood her anger even if he couldn't condone her public humiliation of him. But what could he possibly say? "Sorry, my lawyers were aggressive in defending my reputation. I understand that you're destroyed by your own actions." It would be cruel. Instead, Thomas made a decision he knew was reckless. The next day, he called his assistant and requested a private detective. He wanted to know what Jennifer was doing, where she was living, whether she was all right. His assistant raised an eyebrow. This was not the kind of request that looked good on paper, but she complied. 3 days later, Thomas had Jennifer's current address. She was living in a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, working part-time at a bookstore. According to the investigator's report, she'd largely withdrawn from social life. Her Instagram had been deleted. She'd changed her phone number and didn't appear in any social media. She'd become a ghost, erased by the fallout from her own rage. Thomas found himself making an excuse to leave the office early. He drove to her neighborhood and parked across the street from her apartment building. He sat in his car, watching the front door, waiting for her to arrive home from work. When she did, he barely recognized her. She moved slowly, carefully, as if carrying weight invisible to everyone else. Her hair was longer and naturally colored. She wore no makeup. She looked like a woman who'd aged 5 years in 6 months. She was also, he realized with sudden clarity, the only person he'd ever truly wanted to understand him. Jennifer was stocking the shelves at Riverside Books when the bell above the door chimed. It was late Friday afternoon, and she'd already worked a 10-hour shift. She didn't look up, just continued organizing the poetry section with the quiet dedication that had become her refuge. The job paid barely minimum wage, but the books didn't judge her. The customers rarely recognized her. In this small space, she'd found something close to peace. "Can I help you find something?" She turned to find Thomas standing in the aisle, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, looking utterly incongruous in the modest used bookstore. Jennifer's breath caught. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The man before her was both the person she'd known and a stranger. His face carried lines she didn't recognize, not from aging, but from the weight of responsibility and secrets. "I was hoping to," he said quietly. "But I'm not sure where to start." "Why are you here?" Jennifer's voice was defensive, guarded. "I've been thinking about what you said in the park. About humiliation. About how it feels." He stepped closer, and Jennifer stepped back, knocking a book from the shelf. Thomas picked it up, a collection of poems by Maya Angelou. He read the title and smiled sadly. "Still, like air." "Thomas, if you've come to escalate the legal threats." "I haven't." He held up the book. "I came because I wanted you to know that I understand something I didn't before. That day in the park, when you splashed mud on me, you were responding to real pain. Real betrayal. I deserved that anger, even if I didn't deserve the public humiliation." He paused. "But neither of us deserved what came after." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, though she fought against them. "You destroyed me. I know. And I'm sorry. Not because of the money or the status, but because I used those things to silence you instead of acknowledging your hurt." He set the book down on a nearby shelf. "Victoria and I ended things last week." Jennifer's chest tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because for the past 6 months, I've had everything I thought I wanted. Wealth. Status. A beautiful woman on my arm. And none of it has made me happy. Do you know why?" He stepped closer, and this time, Jennifer didn't move away. "Because Victoria and I were a perfect arrangement with no foundation. She wanted what I represented. I was grateful for the distraction from examining who I actually was." "And who are you?" Jennifer asked, her voice trembling. "Someone who spent the last 6 months investigating your life because I couldn't stop thinking about you. Someone who realized that you, broken, humiliated, stripped of everything, showed more honesty in a single moment of rage than I've shown in my entire adult life." Jennifer's hands shook. "Thomas, I can't process this. You've had everything handed to you. You became someone else." "Yes. And in doing so, I lost the only thing that mattered, the ability to feel anything real." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. His skin was warm, familiar despite all the changes. I know I'm the last person you want to see. I know I'm probably making everything worse. But I needed you to know that the mud you threw didn't land on the man you were angry at. It landed on someone who was about to become someone very different. And maybe, somewhere in your hurt, you knew that. Maybe that's why you did it. Jennifer pulled her hand back and leaned against the bookshelf, her breathing shallow. I lost my job. My friends. My sense of self. All because I let rage control me for 5 seconds. I know. And I made it worse by having my lawyers intimidate you instead of understanding you. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I can't fix what happened. But I can tell you that I've been more honest in this conversation than I was in 6 months with Victoria. That has to mean something. It means you've made your choices and now you're regretful, Jennifer said, but without the hardness she'd carried before. That's not my responsibility to fix. I'm not asking you to fix anything. Thomas turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you were right to be angry. You still are. But somewhere beneath the rage, I think there's more to this than punishment and regret. He left before she could respond. Jennifer stood alone in the quiet bookstore, holding the copy of Still, Like Air that he'd left on the shelf. She opened it to a random page and read the first line, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." She didn't know if she could forgive him. She didn't know if he deserved forgiveness. But she knew that the story between them wasn't finished. Some stories, she realized, don't have clean endings. They have only the possibility of transformation, for both the people involved. That evening, instead of going straight home, Jennifer walked to Riverside Park.